The best moments are the ones spent with those who actually care. That one sentence turned what should have been the happiest day of my life into a quiet nightmare. When those words were spoken, I still had no idea what was coming. I was dressed in what was meant to be the most beautiful outfit I would ever wear, a flowing ivory gown with delicate lace sleeves. The fabric shimmered softly whenever I moved, and small pearls sewn into the bodice caught the light like scattered stars. Through my thin veil, I could see the garden outside the window, a clear blue sky, gentle trees swaying, and flowers blooming in careless joy. That day, I, Harper Collins, was supposed to put aside my practical life as an accountant and become the lead in my own fairy tale. The venue was a quiet guest house hidden in the woods, not too far from the city, but far enough to feel magical. Beside me, the groom, Dylan, kept smiling with that nervous excitement he always had. His parents, maybe even more than him, kept telling me, "You look absolutely lovely, Harper." But the seats where my mother, Vivian, and my sister, Riley, should have been sitting remained empty, like two missing teeth in a perfect smile. The ceremony was already running late. I could see staff members whispering in the corner, and their pitying glances landed on my back like small, cold raindrops. "I'll try calling them again," Dylan said, getting up. All I could do was nod. The sunlight pouring through the aisle was so bright it hurt to look at directly. Dylan came back a few minutes later and just shook his head quietly. That single movement told me everything I needed to know. No answer. No signal. Nothing. "I see," I whispered, trying to keep my voice steady while staring out the window. But inside, a small thorn of worry that I had been pushing down for months began to spread through my chest like poison. I needed a sign that they were safe, anything at all. So I reached for my phone. And then it happened. A notification appeared in a group chat with my old high school friends. Someone had written, "Wait, isn't this Harper's mom and sister?" Attached was a screenshot. My fingers went cold and clumsy as I tapped the image. The photo showed familiar faces smiling widely. The location was the rooftop lounge of the most expensive hotel in the city. There was my mother, Vivian, wearing a glittering silver dress. Next to her, my sister Riley held up a new designer bag like a trophy. My aunt and cousins were gathered around them, laughing. And written across the bottom of the photo, in cheerful letters, were the exact same words: "The best time spent with the people who truly matter." Everything stopped. A strange numbness spread through my head, and my ears started ringing. What was this? On my wedding day? They had chosen to be there instead of here. The truth hit me like a physical blow. In their world, I was never part of the family that mattered. My phone slipped in my trembling hand. I saw my own pale, blurry reflection on the dark screen. I don't know how long I stayed like that. When Dylan gently shook my shoulder and asked, "Harper, what's happening?" I finally came back to myself. Then, in a voice so calm it scared me, I said, "Dylan, they're not coming." I showed him the screen. His expression shifted from confusion to shock to anger. His parents looked too and went completely silent. A heavy quiet fell over the whole room. One of the staff members nervously asked, "Should we postpone the ceremony?" At that question, something inside me cracked. But instead of tears, a cold, hard determination started rising from deep within. I stood up slowly and pulled off my veil with my own hands. Then, loud enough for everyone to hear, I said, "The ceremony will happen today." I looked around at Dylan's family and our confused guests. "Everyone who came here," I continued, "you are my real family now. So, let's begin. Let's build something new." There was no acting in my voice. I meant every word. In that moment of emptiness, I felt a quiet, burning strength awaken. The ceremony that followed ended up being one of the most beautiful memories I have. Dylan's family treated me like their own daughter, and my close friends surrounded me with so much warmth that I almost forgot about the empty seats. Almost. After it was over, I picked up my phone, found my mother and sister's contact information, and deleted both names without any emotion. I didn't feel angry or sad. I felt free. That freedom, however, had been a long time coming. The truth is, my relationship with my family had been breaking apart for years, ever since I started earning steady money as an accountant. It began 5 years ago with a tearful phone call from my mother. "Harper, please," she cried, "I'm going to lose the house." She told me that after her divorce from my father, she had kept spending too much on clothes, dinners, and trips to keep up appearances. Now the bank was threatening to take everything. At that time, I had finally saved enough to start my own accounting firm, a dream I had worked toward since college. But my mother knew exactly how to make me feel guilty. "So your dream matters more than your own mother," she sobbed. "After everything I gave up for you?" Those words were like invisible knives. I tried to say no. I really did. But after days of crying and guilt-tripping, my resistance crumbled. Just this once, I told myself. I handed over my savings and took over her mortgage payments instead. When I gave her the money, she hugged me and said, "I knew I could count on you." But I didn't feel relief. I felt despair watching my dream disappear. My younger sister, Riley, who was 5 years younger, used a different kind of manipulation. Paying for her college tuition was hard enough. But after she graduated, she announced she wanted to become a famous nail artist and needed a large amount of money to start her own salon. I tried to give her practical advice. "Why don't you write a business plan and apply for a small loan? I'll help you for free." She reacted as if I had insulted her very soul. "Of course you wouldn't understand my glamorous world, you boring accountant," she screamed. Then she called our mother. Vivian immediately took Riley's side. "How can you not believe in your own sister's dream?" she scolded. Then came the same old weapon. "I gave up my youth for you too. And now you won't even help your sister." So I gave in again and sent the money. Riley's salon lasted less than a year. She canceled appointments, argued with customers online, and stopped showing up whenever she felt like it. The money vanished. But she just shrugged and said, "Oh well, it was a good experience." Then my mother suggested a new arrangement. I would send Riley $300 every month as a dream fund so she could figure out her next plan. And like a fool, I agreed. That money left my account automatically, month after month, like a slow, steady bleed. The money was only part of the problem. The real wound came from their constant contempt. When I passed a difficult certification exam to become a licensed accountant, they didn't congratulate me. My mother said, "That's nice, but don't you have a boyfriend yet?" A woman's real happiness is in marriage. Riley said, "So does that mean you got a raise? Can I expect a nicer birthday gift this year?" When I bought my first small apartment with my own savings, my mother walked in and said, "Oh, it looks smaller than the pictures." Riley added, "For that price, I thought you'd find somewhere better." They never celebrated me. They only measured me by what I could give them. The betrayal on my wedding day was just the final, most cruel version of that same pattern. They wanted me to know that I did not deserve to be the happy center of any story. After that day, I stayed at Dylan's apartment to rest. His parents welcomed me with open arms and said, "You are our family now." Every time I felt their warmth, I realized how long I had been freezing in cold, selfish water. For weeks, my mother and Riley did not contact me at all. It was a strange, eerie silence. And then, on a Wednesday morning, an email arrived from my mother. The subject read, "Wonderful family news." My heart actually jumped with hope. Could it be an apology? I opened the message. It said, "Dear Harper, I am happy to tell you that your sister Riley is engaged to a wonderful man from a good family. Next month we are hosting an engagement party at a fancy hotel. After paying for the venue, her dress, and the catering, we are about $2,500 short. As the family's financial supporter, I trust you will handle this. Please send the money by the end of the week." There was no apology for missing my wedding. No question about how I was doing. Just a request for money. Something inside me broke for good. Not with anger or sadness, but with a cold, clear finality. I realized there was no point in arguing or yelling. They only understood one language. I opened the reply box. My hands were completely steady. I typed a single word, "Congratulations." Then I hit send. In that one word, I said everything I needed to say. Goodbye. I would never give them another cent. After sending the email, I deleted their numbers from my phone and blocked them everywhere. I erased them from my digital life completely. It felt like cutting out a sick piece of myself. But I knew that wasn't enough. They still had keys to my apartment. They could walk in any time they wanted, using the excuse of family. The thought made me shiver. So I went to the property management office that same day and asked to have the locks changed. The next afternoon, a locksmith gave me 3 new keys. "These will make the old ones useless," he said. I took the keys with shaking hands. When I inserted the new key into my door and turned it, I heard a loud click. That sound was not just a lock closing. It was the sound of my past being sealed off. I leaned against the door and slid down to the floor. Then, for the first time since my wedding, I cried. But these were not sad tears. They were tears of relief. When I finished crying, I opened my laptop to handle the final chain, the automatic money transfers. I logged into my bank account and looked at the screen. To mother, $1,500 every month. To sister, $300 every month. Almost $2,000 a month. $21,000 a year. I could have traveled, saved, or built a better life with that money. I had been giving it all away. For one brief moment, guilt flickered in my chest. What would they do without me? Then I remembered standing alone in that wedding hall. I moved my cursor to the stop button next to my mother's name. Click. A warning appeared. This action cannot be undone. I clicked yes. Then I did the same for Riley. When the list of transfers was empty, I felt lighter than I had in years. A few days later, on a quiet Saturday, Dylan and I were eating breakfast when the intercom buzzer rang. I looked at the screen. There stood my mother, Vivian, her face twisted with anger. Beside her was Riley, arms crossed, looking annoyed. They must have tried their old keys and found they didn't work. I glanced at Dylan and said, "It's fine." I did not answer the buzzer. I just watched them in silence. My mother started pressing the button over and over, like a crazy person. Then they disappeared from the screen. But a few minutes later, I heard loud banging on the front door. Thud. 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 The wall shook. "Harper, open this door right now." "Seriously, sis? You can't just stop the money." Their shouting did not sound like family anymore. It sounded like a fight between strangers. I took a slow sip of my coffee and leaned back into the sofa. Dylan put his arm around my shoulders. His warmth made me feel safe. The old me would have opened the door out of embarrassment. But not anymore. This was my home. And they were not family anymore. They were invaders. I waited in silence until the banging stopped and they finally left. But they were not done. Soon, I heard sirens getting closer. They had called the police. I sighed and picked up a folder I had prepared weeks ago. Inside were printouts of everything, bank statements, screenshots of their social media posts from my wedding day, and emails. Soon the doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw 2 police officers. Behind them stood my mother, crying dramatically, and Riley, pretending to look scared. "My daughter stole all our family heirlooms and locked us out," my mother wailed. "She's mentally unstable and threatened us," Riley added. I took a slow breath and opened the door. "Good afternoon, officers," I said calmly. "Please come in. I can explain everything." I led them to the living room and spread out the documents on the table. "They reported theft and threats," I said evenly. "But here are the actual facts." The older officer looked through the papers carefully. His expression became serious. He turned to my mother and asked, "What exactly was stolen?" My mother's mouth opened and closed. "And what threats did she make?" the officer pressed. Riley stammered and could not answer. Their lies fell apart completely. The officer turned to them with a firm voice. "This is not a theft case. Based on the evidence, your daughter has every legal right to change her locks and stop giving you money. If you keep making false reports or disturbing her, we will take legal action." My mother collapsed against the wall, whispering, "No, this can't be." Riley stood frozen, her face bright red. The officers told them to leave. They shuffled away without looking back. I closed the door and turned the lock. Click. Victory. A week later, Dylan's parents and a few close friends came over to my apartment. Everyone brought homemade food. The room was warm and full of laughter. Dylan's father gave me a shy smile and said, "Harper, you are a blessing to our family." I cried again, but only happy tears. For the first time in my life, I felt loved without conditions. My friends hugged me and said, "You made it. Now just be happy." And I realized something important. Blood means nothing. The people who tried to hurt me shared my blood. The people who truly cared for me did not. Family is not about birth. It is about time, respect, and real love. The smiles around me that night were my real family. A few months later, a distant relative told me what happened to my former family. Riley's engagement was broken off. Her fiancé's family was old and wealthy, and they cared a lot about reputation. When they heard about the scene at my apartment, with the police and false accusations, they canceled everything. "We cannot be connected to such people," the fiancé's father said. Riley lost her rich fiancé. Now she blames my mother and me for everything. My mother, Vivian, fell behind on her mortgage payments without my money and lost her house. Without the money holding them together, the whole family fell apart. They all blame each other now. When I heard this, I did not feel happy. I just felt a quiet, sad pity. Today, Dylan and I sit on the balcony of our new apartment in the soft afternoon light. I still work as an accountant, but I have new dreams now. One is to finally take that trip to Italy that I gave up years ago. The other is to share my story online, through a blog and social media, to help other people who are suffering the same way I did. My past was not meaningless. Because I walked through that darkness, I now understand the value of light. My happiness will never again belong to anyone else. From now on, I live for myself and the people who truly love me.